Classroom management. Oh my goodness. It is one of the most important things. Like, you have to have some form of management or it just won't work. Hey guys, my name's Monique. Today I am going to be answering some questions that some people have sent me about different classroom management techniques that I use within my classroom. Just to start off, if you're new to my channel, welcome. I teach kindergarten. I do all different types of videos of things in my classroom, tips, strategies, whatever it is. Every now and then I do a vlog, and today we're talking classroom management like I already said. So I had some people Instagram me some messages about different classroom management things that they had or were wondering, and so I'm going to answer those questions. But before I start, I just want to say this video is kind of going to be short and sweet and to the point, because one of the most important things I think that anybody can know, whether you're a new teacher or you're a seasoned teacher, you probably obviously already know this. Everyone's classroom management techniques and strategies are going to be a little bit different. What works for you may not work for me, and what works for me may not work for you. But the common thing is that your classroom has to have some form of management, or it can get completely chaotic. And I think that applies for K through 12. I don't teach 12th grade, but I'm pretty sure that if you don't have some form of structure, 12th graders can get just as out of hand as my little kindergartners can. And so it's very important that you have some form of system in your classroom. In one of my videos, I think it was like the first day of school or getting prepared for kindergarten, the first day of kindergarten, I talk about routines, procedures, and expectations. And that kind of falls hand in hand with classroom management. You have to have solid routines, solid procedures, and solid expectations. And when you have those things, classroom management kind of just, that is managing your classroom. So I think that it's important for you to decide what works for you and work really hard on establishing those expectations with your students. I talk about how at the beginning of the year, I really do not dive into academics. I focus so much. I mean, we do academic things, but my main focus, the most important thing to me, is making sure my students understand how everything works in the classroom. What is Miss Waters like? What is Miss Waters' expectations? And I think that the older students get, it's even more important for you to do that. And maybe you can correct me if I'm wrong, but at some point, your child or the student in your classroom has had 5 different teachers. So they've had to learn 5 different personalities and 5 different expectations and 5 different ways of doing things. So I would think that it's even more important to spend time on those routines, expectations, and procedures, because they need to figure you out. They are learning you just like you're learning them. So you need to give them time to understand how things work. And that's kind of how it is with kindergarten. What might fly at home with your mom and your dad may not fly in my classroom. Or I may be a little bit less strict and easygoing than your parents. Who knows? Everyone needs time to understand each other. So that's most important. If you are midway through the year and you've already skipped, jump, leap past that part, and you have other questions, those are the questions that I'm going to be answering today. So one of the questions was the beginning of the year, and they asked me, like, how firm are you with your students at the beginning of the year? And I will say that I am pretty firm. I mean what I say, and I say what I mean, and I think it's very important that you stick with that, because kids will test you. And the second that you let them get by with something that you told them that you're not going to let them get by with, guess what? You've completely made them feel like, okay, I can get away with this I can get away with this. I can do this. She's not gonna, like, you know what I mean? And they may not be thinking of it in that way, especially the younger kids, but subliminally they understand, like, Miss Waters is gonna say that I'm gonna miss free choice if I do this, but really, if I say sorry at the end of the day, I'm gonna get my free choice back. Boo-boo. It ain't no getting it back. Love ya. Try again tomorrow. Tomorrow's a new day. Tomorrow's a better day. And that's what I always say to my students, like, tomorrow will be better. Still love you. Like, but I'm not going to back down, because when you start backing down, they're going to try it and they're going to test it. And I know it's hard. I know it can be like, oh, like they're sad, they're little, they're so cute, but you have to stick with what you say. So I am pretty firm at the beginning of the year. I give my parents a preference? No, that's not the word. A warning? Whatever. I tell my parents at the beginning of the year, don't be shocked if you see your child on yellow. It's because I'm trying to teach them. When you don't raise your hand, you get your clip moved down. And I know some people have like if, ands, buts about clips. It's required in my school. We have a PBIS system, so your opinion or my opinion doesn't matter on clip charts because I don't have a choice. So that's what I use. I use other things in my classroom. I've talked about those in other videos, like blurt beans. Those are my favorite thing that I use. I actually don't use the clip chart too much at this point in the year, but that was just an example. Whatever your consequences are, you're going to receive a consequence. So to answer the question about the beginning of the year, boop, boop, yes, I am very firm. I mean what I say what I mean, and that's that. Another question that somebody asked me was about centers. I do have a video on centers, but I would say that the biggest thing with centers is to start off slow, start off easy, and then ease your way through. When I start my centers at the beginning of the year, they're like 5-second centers. Basically, all we do is practice rotating. Boop, ba-doop, ba-doop, stop. Boop, ba-doop, ba-doop, stop. Boop, ba-doop, ba-doop, stop. And that's it. Then the next day, I might put something at the center like a piece of paper. And I might say, okay, draw a picture. Clean it up. Rotate. Draw a picture. Clean it up, rotate. Then I might add like my bell system in there. If you have more questions about centers, I'll link it below and that will answer all of that. But same thing, I have expectations, I have routines, I have procedures for centers. I explain them, I talk to them about it, and I mean what I say what I mean. Do they get out of hand sometimes, like in December when it's close to Christmas time and they're ready for Christmas break and they can't get outdoor recess because it's too cold? Yes, they are crazy right now, but don't back down. Don't back down. That's another tip. Don't back down. They see you frazzled, they'll get even more frazzled. You gotta act like you got it together and just tell them, wow, this is not the way that we act during centers. I'm so disappointed in you. I don't really understand why we're acting like this. I know that you know better, so since we're acting this way, we've lost our free choice for today. Not saying that happened today or anything, but you have to stand firm. Be strong. You are strong. You can do this. All right. Giving students attention when there are, I think the question was giving all of the students attention when you have a student who's having extreme behaviors, but you still want to focus on the rest of the class. I guess that would kind of depend on what that behavior is. You know, like every behavior is different. If there's a student who is like in the corner having a meltdown, breaking things and stuff like that, everything really depends on the student. Like, what is causing the student to act that way? Do they have something else going on? Is there something going on in their home life? Are they just being defiant? Do they have something do they have a form of a disability? Like, what is the reasoning for that student acting that way or behaving that way? So I think that it's very important for you to take a step back and try to figure out where the behavior is coming from. I think that that's the number one thing. It's kind of hard to answer that question if I don't know that specific student, and with every student, every situation is going to be different. But I would say that the number one thing that I found is trying to figure out what is causing this behavior. When you figure out what the triggers are, you can sometimes when you figure out what the triggers are, you can sometimes avoid the potential behavior by avoiding those triggers. So if you know that transitions are a trigger point for that student, then you can make sure that when a transition is coming up, giving them a warning about it and saying, hey, like letting them know before. So what I would suggest doing if you're having a student that's showing extreme behaviors is documenting as much as you can. Documentation. Writing down the times that these behaviors are occurring, marking how often these behaviors are occurring, what time of day they're occurring, how long they're lasting, and things like that, and trying to figure out if there's a pattern. If you can find a pattern, then it's easier for you to figure out a system on how to avoid those patterns. If you're just sitting there and you're like, oh, he's throwing a tantrum all day long, or he's throwing things at people, or he's hitting people, but you're not documenting it and you're not really taking the time to watch it and figure out what's going on, then you're not going to be able to try to avoid the behavior because you don't have enough resources or evidence or proof of what is going on, if that makes sense. So if you feel like that's not something that you can do because you're trying to teach 20-something other kids, some suggestions that I might have is talking to the administrators at your school and asking if you can be provided with whether it's a therapist at your school counselor, or somebody like that to come in and kind of like monitor the behaviors for the day. If you don't have that, then I know a teacher personally who does it herself, and I know it's a lot of work, it's a lot of paperwork, but if you want to try to get rid of said poor behaviors, that is something that you're kind of going to have to do. And then students being physical was another question that I had. I have had students, I don't have any of that this year. Praise Jesus, hallelujah. hallelujah. But I have had students that just have issues with just keeping their hands to themselves. And it's not because they are like trying to be abusive or hurtful to other students. It's just that they want to touch everything. So some different things that I've done. I have a calm down tub, but it basically just has a bunch of different sensory things in there, such as, and like fidgets in there. Target has a great fidget section. It's in the kids section. It's on the ends of it. It was there at the beginning of the school year, so hopefully it's still there. But just looking up different fidgets, like I know people don't like the fidget spinners. I actually love fidget spinners. I think they're so fun. But there's all different types of fidgets. I can link some below. But having a tub of those different things and having those available for that student to take a break and go touch those things if they're feeling like they need to touch it, whether it's putty or things like that. I know that keeping it at a child's desk sometimes can be distracting to the other students. So having a tub with those materials there that they can go and they can touch when they're feeling like touching can be helpful. Another thing that I've done, and this is for younger students, this would not work for a high schooler that's keeping their hands to themselves, but I feel like that's not keeping their hands to themselves, but that's a whole other issue. I tell my students, this is your bubble. You are inside a bubble. I reference bubbles a lot. Catch a bubble, thinking bubbles, you're in a bubble. Bubbles are my thing, like Linda the Good Witch. Anyways, Linda, is that her name? Oh, Linda. Wicked Witch. Linda. Her name's Linda. Yeah, bubble. Anyways, you are inside of a bubble. This is your bubble. If you go outside of your bubble, you're going to pop your bubble. And if you pop your bubble, that's sad. You're not going to have a bubble anymore. And if you go outside of your bubble and you touch someone else, you're going to pop their bubble too. Would you like it if someone popped your bubble? No, Miss Waters, I don't want anybody to pop my bubble. I like my bubble. Show me your bubble. Here's your bubble. If you can keep your bubble until math time, you're going to get a sticker, or you're going to get a pencil, or you're going to get a lollipop. Find what motivates your students too. That's important. So as far as being physical, I really just talk to my kids about how personal space. If you don't want to use bubble, just talk about personal space. Talk about it a lot. Talk to them about how, you wouldn't like somebody in your space. Have different sit spots on the carpet. Keep them away from other students. If they keep on touching other students, they have to be separated. They're not going to like that. Well, if you want to earn back your time to sit closer to the other students, you have to keep your hands to yourself. When you're sitting on the carpet, hands in your lap. Have them sit on their pocket. Have them sit on their hands. Have them put their hands in their pockets. Whatever you need to do, give them something to play with their hands if they're touching too much. All of those different things I think really work. And then another thing, if you're having severe behaviors in your classroom, finding out what that student's interest is. There's different interest surveys that you can do to try to figure out what motivates that student. Once you figure out what motivates that child, then you can figure out how to implement different rewards and prizes and things like that for them displaying good behaviors. And the final thing that I want to say to you is that you have to be patient. When you're trying whatever it is, when you're trying the newest Pinterest idea, when you're trying the newest idea that you read on a blog or in an article or that you saw on YouTube, whatever it may be, you have to be patient. Just because it doesn't work the first day does not mean that it's not going to work. I would say a solid 3 to 5 weeks of a routine of really working on it is the best way for you to know, is this working or not? And I know that can sometimes seem like 3 to 5 weeks, like, come on, lady, like, I'm having serious, like, it should be showing improvement throughout those 3 to 5 weeks. Don't get me wrong, like, you don't want it to be HE double hockey sticks all the way up until the 5th week, but you have to give things time. And you also have to be willing to say, this didn't work. I put in all this work. I came up with this great idea. I have sticker charts. I have this big old poster board that I put out. I have all of this stuff. I put in all of this work. I stayed late and it failed. And that's okay. It sucks. No one likes that. But if you just try to stick with it because you don't want to come up with a new routine or a new management system, guess what? Your students are still going to continue to act crazy. You're going to be miserable, and it's not going, some things just don't work. Use your resources. Check out what other teachers are doing. Ask your principal if you can go and observe another classroom that you see in your building that is doing a good job. Spend your planning period. Ask that teacher, hey, can I come and watch what you do with your classroom? I'm just wondering what types of different classroom management things you do. I do all different types of things, call and responses, different songs and chants, music for cleanup, all different types of hints and triggers that let my kids know this means be quiet, this means clean up, this means sit down, this means stand up, this means line up, this means that, boop, 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 boop. You got to figure out what works best for you, but watching other teachers is a great way to figure that out. So use your resources, be patient, get to know your students, take time, and it will all work out. I don't know how helpful this was, but hopefully it was helpful for you. If you have more questions, just put them in the comments below. I would be happy to answer whatever questions you have. I'm here to help. And yeah, that's all. Thanks for watching, you guys. For more of my videos, make sure you subscribe to my channel. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. Subscribing and liking my videos lets me know if this content was good for you and allows me to figure out what other content I should put moving forward. Also, like I said, if you have questions, put them below. I would be happy to answer anything you have. All right, guys. Love you. Bye.